December 16th, 2001. It's week 14 of the NFL season, and as we enter the final quarter of the year, we've got a big interconference battle on our hands at the RCA Dome between the Atlanta Falcons and the Indianapolis Colts. To say that this is a big game for the Falcons would be putting it lightly. We're 12 games into the season, and they find themselves sitting at 6-6, having lost 2 straight games in blowout fashion to the St. Louis Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Their season is slowly slipping away from them, as now they're more than a game out of the playoff picture. Atlanta has no wiggle room or no margin for error whatsoever over this final quarter of the year. That's the bad news. The good news is that their opponent is the Indianapolis Colts, one of the worst teams in football in terms of recent form. The Colts have been reeling. Their defense is the literal worst defense in football, and after starting the season 4-3, they've dropped 5 straight games, including their most recent one, a 41-6 defeat at the hands of the Miami Dolphins. The Colts have nothing to play for outside of pride. The Colts have allowed 39 or more points in each of their last 3 games, have been outscored by 80 points in their last 4 games combined, and the hot seat for Jim Mora as the head coach is burning like the flame of 1,000 suns. This should be a get-right game for the Falcons. No, they had not been playing well as of late, and it looked really poor over their last 2. But if there was an opponent to play to get back into the playoff picture, the Colts seemed like a pretty good one to play to try and right the ship. Instead, that did not happen, as with about a minute left in the first half, the Colts found themselves up 21-14, thanks to a pair of touchdown passes from none other than Peyton Manning himself. Manning had put up a monster first half, as on the final 4 drives of the half up until that point, he was 13 for 15, throwing for 172 yards, including 8 completions of 12-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 154, which is just 4 points off of a perfect passer rating. As he had done so many times thus far, Peyton Manning was having a game to remember, and the Falcons had no answers to stopping him or this Colts offense. Still, you only trail by 7 despite your defensive struggles, and you get the ball to start the second half, so things aren't looking awful as long as you get a stop here. And on first down, when the Colts handed off to Dominic Rhodes and he loses 2 yards, with the Colts showing no urgency to get back to the line, it seems as if they're fine going into the half with a 7-point lead. Now, you've got a chance to regroup and make some halftime adjustments, and
on the stop for Atlanta, and a timeout for the Colts.
Timeout, Atlanta. Their second charge.
Check that to timeout for the Falcons.
You call timeout? You burn your second timeout of the half to stop the clock and give the Colts a chance to drive down the field? Despite everything I just said, the Colts were ready to wave the white flag, and you're giving them an opportunity to do an Uno reverse card and not do that? It's Peyton freaking Manning! Why the actual heck would you call a timeout in this spot?
A 15-yarder. Manning with plenty of time. Trevor Inslee, another NFL Europe product, and from the 19. A pump fake. Peyton Manning. Touchdown, Indianapolis. That's our NFL Europe connection.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something to look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something to look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're going to take a look at the mind of Atlanta Falcons head coach, Dan Reeves. There's a lot of debate about whether or not Dan Reeves should be a Hall of Famer. And even years after his death, there's talk about whether this man right here should be enshrined in the hallowed halls of Canton, Ohio. On one hand, he's got the most Super Bowl appearances of any head coach who has been eligible for the Hall of Fame for over a decade and is not yet in. He won everywhere he went, winning 190 regular season games. He made it to the Super Bowl 3 times in 4 years with the Denver Broncos. He immediately turned the New York Giants around after the disastrous Ray Handley era that was only 2 years but felt like 20. And he immediately turned the Atlanta Falcons around and guided them to their first Super Bowl appearance in franchise history. He's a 2-time AP Coach of the Year winner, and as of this video being released, he's inside the top 10 all-time in victories, although he will be overtaken soon by Mike Tomlin. So, he's got a case. On the other hand, he never won the big one, and a big reason why was because of doing dumb crap like this and some horrible in-game management skills. There was no reason whatsoever to call a timeout here, and you can make a legitimate argument that this timeout ended up destroying the Falcons and whatever playoff hopes they had remaining for the 2001 season. They lost this game, and it's not hard to see why. So with that being said, let's take a look at why taking a timeout with 51 seconds left and giving Peyton Manning extra time to drive down the field is a really bad idea. At this point, you're down by 7. And one of the main reasons you're down by 7 is because your defense has stunk. Peyton Manning and company have driven the ball down your throats throughout the entire first half. On the previous drive, they scored a touchdown. On the drive before that, despite starting inside their own 5-yard line, they scored a touchdown. We were 5 drives into the game, and the Colts had scored a touchdown on 3 of them. When a team is scoring a touchdown 60% of the time or more, that's an indictment on your defense. And that shows that, for the most part, they can have their way against you. Out of a possible 427 yards that they could have gotten on those 5 drives, the Colts got 272, meaning that they were picking up 64% of the field and were averaging over 54 yards per drive. And making things even more insane is the fact that you're getting the ball to start the second half. Indianapolis won the coin toss and elected to receive. So it's not like the Colts were getting it to open it up and you needed to steal a possession somehow. The game was in your hands and in your control at this point. If the Colts want to take it into the half with how well they played, here's an idea. Let them do that. It's like if Aaron Judge, with 1 out, is showing bunt with a runner on first, and you decide to give him an outside pitch that he can't possibly drop down. Maybe just let him bunt, seeing as he's sort of doing you a favor here. But aside from the insanity of it, you might be saying, well, why shouldn't the Falcons trust their defense to get a stop? If you get a stop and get the ball back, then you have a chance to double dip, especially since your offense has been playing well as of late, having scored a touchdown on each of their last 2 drives. And to be fair, that's a valid argument, which makes this seem entirely like hindsight bias. Heck, Dan Reeves even said as much after the game, defending his decision to call the timeout. As Reeves said, they ran the football on first down, which kind of gives you an indication they aren't going to try to get in position. We threw Dominic Rhodes for a 3-yard loss, so we called timeout, hoping to get the ball back. Looking back, yes, you wish you hadn't called the timeout. So even though this decision backfired, we're only talking about how bad it was because it didn't work out, and not because of the concept and the decision to call the timeout in the first place. You're being such a hypocrite, aren't you? Well, not quite. Because here's where it gets insane. Because do you want to know how many timeouts the Falcons had when they called that timeout? 2. They had 2 timeouts. They burned one on the previous drive. So when the Colts had the ball here with 51 seconds left, the Falcons only had 2 timeouts to work with. Not that I think this would have been a smart decision regardless, seeing as I'm not giving Peyton freaking Manning a chance to rethink things and try to push the ball down the field. When you're getting the ball to start the second half, he's been playing well, and he's fine waving the white flag along with the rest of your coaching staff. But if you had all 3 of your timeouts, I at least understand the logic. But with 2 timeouts, there is nothing, and I truly mean it, nothing good that can come out of calling a timeout with 51 seconds left. By your own admission, Coach Reeves, the Colts indicated that they weren't going to try to get in position. They'll try to get into position, however, if they get a first down, because at that point, they know that the clock isn't an issue, and the field position isn't an issue, both from the offensive standpoint of being able to realistically push the ball down the field with enough time on the clock, and the defensive standpoint of not allowing anything if they give it back to you, barring a turnover. Let's say your strategy works perfectly, and the Colts play it exactly how you're expecting them to play it, which is to concede a drive, wave the white flag, and just go into the half up by 7. With 51 seconds left, on first down, you burn your second timeout. On second down, the Colts call a running play, which takes about 5 seconds off the clock, down to 46 seconds. You burn your final timeout. On third down, the Colts call a running play, which takes about 5 seconds off the clock, down to 41 seconds, plus the 40-second play clock, meaning that on fourth down, there's 1 second left. At that point, the Colts take a knee, run the ball, or call a passing play where they send everyone deep and just have Manning chuck it out of bounds. So even if your defense did its job, guess what? You wouldn't be able to get the freaking ball back anyways. With 3 timeouts left, okay, I'm not crazy about the strategy, but I can understand it. But with 2 timeouts left, the best case scenario, if the Colts play it the way you thought they were going to play it by your own admission, is that the score remains 21-14 in their favor at the half. The worst case scenario is that the Colts get a first down, then push the ball after that and make it a 2-score game, which, shocker, that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, by not calling a timeout, the best and worst case scenario is that it's 21-14 at the half. So let's look at this. In both options, the best case scenario is 21-14. In one option, the worst case scenario is 28-14, and in the other option, the worst case scenario is 21-14. So why did you do this? You allowed the Colts to rethink their strategy and allowed Peyton Manning to get a second chance to score. And you did it because you were planning for a scenario that, quite frankly, did not exist. What Dan Reeves did here was like dumping your life savings into volcano insurance when you live in South Carolina. Nothing good could have come from calling a timeout there, and everyone knew it. That is, everyone except for the man been watching this entire time, Dan Reeves. And to say that it cost the Falcons in a big way would be putting it lightly. As a general rule of thumb, if there is no way for you to get the ball back, your defense has been struggling all day, and the opposing offense is willing to end the drive, scoring no points, then you should let them do that. Football is a game of possessions, and if the other team is willing to concede a possession, and there is no way that you can steal a possession yourself, then just let them concede a possession. It's not like you can do anything. Remember that old saying about not interrupting your opponent when they're in the middle of making a mistake? Dan Reeves should have taken that advice here, because if he did, then none of this would have ever happened, and the Falcons might be winning this game. Instead, we saw what happened with the final product, and it was not good. Not good at all. So what did we learn from all of this? If you're calling a timeout to try and get the ball back, and there is no chance, even if you play your cards perfectly, that you can get the ball back, then maybe you shouldn't call the timeout, and you should rethink your entire strategy. If you have no idea how timeouts work, or how a clock works, then you probably have no business being a head coach in the National Football League. If you're giving any team an extra possession for no reason, then you're probably doing something wrong. And if that team you're giving an extra possession to is being led by Peyton freaking Manning, then you're really doing something wrong. And if a team is willing to hurt their own interests and go against their own interests, don't interrupt them or stop them from doing that, especially when you can't do anything off of that yourself, even in the best case scenario. Don't give them a chance to realize the error of their ways and then bite you in the butt. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name of the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.